Well, Thupten, thank you for agreeing to do an interview with the text program here at the University of Arkansas. We're very happy to have you. I'm just going to start off with a few very, very simple, questions, and then we'll just take it from there and see where we go.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me over here, and it's my pleasure to be here. Yeah.
Good. Tell me when you were born.
I was born on 21st November 1989, and I was born in Sikkim.
In Sikkim?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Your parents, where were they born?
My parents, they were born in Tibet, and they escaped into India along with their parents, my grandparents, when they were small. So they escaped into Sikkim, which shares the border with India, Nepal, and Bhutan. So Sikkim is one of the smallest states in India. Yeah.
So your parents and your grandparents escaped Tibet at the same time?
Yep.
And what year would that have been, do you know?
I think the end of 1950, around like 1959, 1960, yeah,
Okay.
early 1960.
So they left directly after the Dalai Lama left?
Yep.
Okay. And what part of Tibet did they come from?
My mother, she comes from Yangtze. It's in central Tibet. It's one of the largest cities in Tibet. I think it's considered as the fourth largest cities in Tibet. And my father comes from Tingezong. It's one of the small county in Tibet. Yep. It is also in central Tibet.
And how were your parents, how did they make a living in Tibet? What did they do?
So my parents in India, right? So my father served in Indian Army. So in Indian Army, there's a special unit called Special Frontier Force, which comprises mainly of the Tibetan people. So my father served there for 25 years, and he got discharged and retired in 1998. And my mother is a housewife. Yeah.
Now, what did your grandparents do in Tibet?
My grandparents, they were mostly farmers. And yep.
Brothers and sisters. Do you have brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I do have. I have one elder brother. He is right now in the same unit that my father served. So it's Special Frontier Force, and it's been like 20 years. For him to be serving over there. And my younger sister right now, she is working as the medical and X-ray lab technician in Delek Hospital in Dharamsala. I'm sure you must have been there when you went to India.
Right. Okay, so you were born in Sikkim in 1989.
Yep.
And describe to me your schooling, your education. As a young boy in Sikkim.
Yeah, so in India, there are three or four different school systems. So I was schooled under the school system, which is called Central Tibetan School Administration, which is being funded and administered by the government of India. So we have, I think, more than 20. It's called Central Tibetan School. It's in my place where I was born. The particular Tibetan settlement is called Rawangla Kumpheling Tibetan Settlement. It's in Sikkim. So we have day school over there. So I was schooled there from from my kindergarten till my middle school. Yep.
Okay.
And then after that, I moved to one of the town, I would say, hill station town. It's called Darjeeling. So I studied there for 1 year, and then after that, I moved to Upper TCB, which is in Dharamsala, Himachal Pradesh. So Dharamsala is the residence of His Holiness Dalai Lama, and that's where Central Tibetan Administration is also located. So I studied there for 2 years, and then I went down to south for my high school, and after that I joined my undergrad college in one of the big Indian cities. It's called Madras. And then I did my grad study from Baroda. It's in Gujarat state of India. Yep.
And what did you do your grad studies in?
I did my grads in commerce. It's called MCom, Master of Commerce in Banking and Insurance. Yep.
So, if I heard you correctly, when you were younger, you attended schools both with the Central Tibetan Administration and the Tibetan Children's Village.
Yep.
You went to both schools at one time or another.
Yep.
How would you compare them?
I would say in terms of facilities, I found that the TCV has a better facilities and is very well maintained. And in terms of teaching also, I found the teaching at the Tibetan Children's Village much more helpful. And the care and the way they nurture their kids, I think I found it very much touching and very helpful, because TCB school is mostly comprised of the kids coming from Tibet, and that's where the Tibetan kids who flee Tibet and come to India, they attend these schools. Whereas in Central Tibetan schools, those kids, including me, so we were born in India and we mostly attend Central Tibetan schools. So the love, the kind of the care, there's more emotions in Tibetan Children's Village, I feel. Yep.
So how many years were you at TCV?
I studied there for 4 years.
And that was from what age to what age?
From, I would say, 14 to 18.
Okay, 14 to 18. And that was in Dharamsala?
Dharamsala.
That was the one in Dharamsala.
And Belakopi TCV.
And Belakopi. So you went to both?
Both, yeah. Belakopi is in South India.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You got your college education at where?
I did my undergrads from Loyola College in Chennai. So Chennai is the capital city of Tamil Nadu. It's one of the big states in India. So
right.
And then I went to Baroda, Gujarat, for my master's program.
Okay. And then I'm trying to get you to America. So after you got your master's degree, did you come to America then?
No, I did not, because one of my goal and my aspiration was to serve in Central Tibetan Administration.
Okay.
Tibetan government exile. So after I completed my master's program, I joined a 5-month public service commission training that was provided by the Public Service Commission of the Central Tibetan Administration. So I did that training for 5 months, where I was taught about the structure and system of CTA, rules, procedures, international relations, and the situation in Tibet, and various other history of Tibet, Tibetan language. So after that, I joined Central Tibetan Administration in 2014, and so from 2014 to till 2021. For like 7.5 years, I worked for Central Tibetan Administration as the project officer or the program officer, managing a few projects over there.
Okay. And then after you had that experience, you came to America.
Yeah, so...
How did you, describe to me why and how that happened.
So yeah, if I go back like 5 years, back, then honestly, I did not have any plan to be here, I did not have any plan to be here. But when I was in CTA, I came to know more about this opportunity, Tibetan Scholarship Program, which is being funded by the Department of State, and it is being administered in collaboration with Tibet Fund and Department of Education, CTA. So I came to know about this scholarship and opportunities. So I feel like this is a good opportunity for me to improve and grow professionally, and I feel like with this opportunity I could be of more help, I could be more productive in my work at CTA. So I applied for that scholarship, and so that's how I ended up over here.
And how did you choose Arkansas? What was the process?
The process is we apply for the scholarship, and the program coordinator at Tibet Fund, he takes care of our admission. So even though we can request him to be sent to any colleges or university where we prefer, but yeah, I have 2 or 3 friends who is an alumni of the university, and they've told me great stories about the people and the community and the place over here. And I did I did research about the college. Sam M. Walton College of Business is is considered as one of the good college, best college, business college in the United States. So I've requested program officer at the Tibet Fund, like I've suggested, recommended few colleges. So Arkansas, Samuel Walton College of Business was one of them. So that's how I ended up over here.
Okay. Um, and so you have received an MBA.
Yep.
And what was your area of concentration?
Yeah, so I'm walking my commencement ceremony this afternoon. So my MBA is in finance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, and how do you intend to use that when you return to India?
So yeah, I mean that's a really good question. And with MBA, I feel like since CT has a two mission. One is to restore freedom in Tibet through negotiation or dialogue with the Chinese government, and on the other hand, we are preparing and we are planning if we were to remain in exile for another 50 or 100 years. So we have to sustain our society or communities in exile, right? So that kind of like connects to the economic development of the Tibetan refugee community. So that's where like my MBA and my education background could be helpful. And in CTA we have like various programs like Tibetan Entrepreneurship Development and non-banking financial company is called Khangzhong Development Finance Corporate. So yeah, I mean my MBA and my education experience, I'm sure it will be helpful, like in these programs.
Do you think you will teach or administer or?
Yeah, so it will mostly be administration and working for these programs. Yeah, I really don't have any interest in teaching, and yeah, so it will be mostly management and administration work.
And that will be for the Tibetan government in exile?
Yep.
Central Tibetan Administration?
Yeah, because I am right now on sabbatical for 2 years. So my sabbatical ends in July this year. So
okay.
I will write to the top management, the Kashag, what we call executive body of the CTA, saying that I've completed my education, I'm coming back, and it's up to them to assign me in any role they see, like that fits my education background and my experience. So yeah, I'm quite excited about like going back and continue working for my community. Yeah.
Right. You told me earlier that you're married.
Yep.
And so what does your wife do now? And what will you two, be doing together when you return to India?
Oh yeah, so I got married a week before I left India. So when I shared this with my American friends, they would be like, "What?" Yeah, I mean it was quite hard leaving India at that time, but there is always a trade-off in our life. So we have to make a trade-off. Without trade-off, there would not be any advantage in our life. And yeah, so. My wife works as the program officer at the Department of Education. So she's been working there for I think 8 years.
And where is that located?
In Dharamsala.
Dharamsala.
Dharamsala, yeah. She works for Department of Education. So I'll go back and I'll spend a month with my family, my parents, and then I'll go back to Dharamsala, and then start working for this Central Tibetan Administration. Yep.
Okay, changing gears a little bit. You mentioned earlier that part of what you see as your job is financially, preparing the Tibetans for, what lies ahead in their future, whether a free and independent Tibet in 50 to 100 years or continued life in exile. Do you have any predictions, or do you have any feelings about the future of Tibet?
Yeah, I mean, as a Tibetan, I'm sure like every Tibetan are very optimistic and very hopeful of getting our issue resolved, be it through dialogue, or be it for middle way approach, or be it for independence. So I personally feel very hopeful, and if you ask me the reason, I may not have a specific reason, like these are the specific reasons that makes me very hopeful. But deep inside my heart, I feel like the situation will improve and situation will change, and I feel like we will see a free Tibet. I mean, in the future, like that gives me a hope. And the second thing is like the Tibetan people inside Tibet, because 3 or 4% like Tibetan people live in exile, right? So there's a like small portion. More than 90% of the Tibetan people, they live inside Tibet, and time and again they have shown the courage. They've shown that they've been very resistant. They have sacrificed their life. They have sacrificed a lot to keep our issues and to keep our struggle alive. So be it in 2008 mass demonstrations, and be it the Hakar movement, be it the self-immolations of nearly more than 150 Tibetan people, like mostly young people, and they've never seen His Holiness the Dalai Lama. They've never had an audience with him, and the very fact that they self-immolated, calling for freedom in Tibet and calling for the return of the Dalai Lama back to Tibet, that's a very clear indication that the younger generation of Tibetan people in Tibet, they very much care about the Tibetan issue, and they very much care about our cause, and the kind of love and affection that they have for His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and that's very hopeful. And I also feel like it also depends on the CTA, because I feel like the leadership capital that we have is in exile, be it spiritual leaders, be it Tibetan government in exile. 3% lives in exile, so leadership capital, but the human capital that is in Tibet. So it is up to the responsibility also mainly lies on the Central Tibetan administration and its leadership in how well we mobilize the efforts and energies of the Tibetan refugees in exile, who is living in India, Nepal, Bhutan, or in Western countries, how well they mobilize the efforts and energies and the talents and resources towards advocating for the Tibetan issues, and how well we preserve our culture, our issues, our language. I think that's the key to sustaining and maintaining and keeping our issues alive. And with respect to resolving issues, if we do that sufficiently and effectively and efficiently, I feel like, as a Buddhist, we believe in impermanence and we believe in causes and conditions. So with the right causes and conditions, this situation will improve, I believe that, because international policy or international politics is mainly influenced by a lot of variety of factors, security of the countries, the interest, the economic interest, and the technological. So with the right causes and conditions, things will improve. For example, last summer I was in Chile as a part of my study abroad program with my MBA cohort. And what was surprising was that, I was talking about the causes and conditions, right? So in 2019, Chilean government, they raised metro fare just by 30 pesos, which is like 4 cents. And that triggered a mass demonstration over there, mass protest. And that is right now, changing the political landscape of Chile. And the government have already set up a committee to amend or change the more than 30 or 40 years old constitution, which has been there since the autocratic government in 1970s. So with the right causes, just like raising the fare by 4% or 4 cents, that has triggered the kind of situation that Chile is right now in. So yeah, with respect to international politics and all Tibetan issues, so I believe that things are bound to change. Things are bound to change. Even in China, economically, the country is right now not doing great. Rich Chinese billionaires, they are fleeing China. They are pulling their money out of China and flying away out of China. And even property bubble and a lot of different factors. So China, as a big nation, right now it is run on fear, by imposing force or fear on the people. So a country as big as China cannot do that for a long period of time. It's bound to change and it's bound to burst. So with that, I think it will open up a lot of opportunities for the Tibetans in the coming year. So yep.
How would you describe the current relationship between the Tibetan government in exile and the Indian government? What is that relationship like?
Yeah, so right after we lost our country, and we reached India, Indian people and government of India have been the most supportive towards the Tibetan people, be in terms of like letting us be there, giving us a home away from home, and supporting us in terms of like having the CTA over there, and supporting us in terms of preserving our culture issues and educating Tibetan children. So providing lands to the Tibetan people, like in more than 10 states in India. So yeah, I mean the relationship has been very, I feel like it's been very cordial and very friendly between the CTA and the government of India. Though I feel like people of India and the government, or like any officials of the government of India, supports Tibetan issue like deep inside their heart. Given a choice, they would obviously advocate for the interests of Tibet. But due to the political nature of the things, government of India, I mean, as pertaining to the policy towards like the Tibetan issue, they've been a little bit cautious in what they do. But politically and economically, socially, culturally, like they've been really supportive. I mean, they've been supportive. We share like thousands of years of relationship, linguistically, culturally, religiously, spiritually. So yeah, India is the country with whom we can connect most. Yeah.
What influence do you think China will have on the way India treats the Tibetan people in India?
I'm sure, like, for example, like Tibet was a buffer state, right? Buffer nation between India and China. So China occupied Tibet and started sharing border with India. And right now, I mean, China is kind of like interfering and in the politics, or kind of like playing around the politics around the border, you know, like kind of like, for example, Jammu and Kashmir is a sensitive area for the government of India, and part of it is right now is being claimed by the Pakistani government. So, I mean, with China, you know, like kind of like interfering in all this politics, even in Arunachal Pradesh, like kind of like, for example, I'm giving an example. So they interfere in these issues where they say like, we are interfering, you know, I mean, if you interfere in Tibetan issues, we will also interfere in all these border regions issues. So kind of like they can play, you know, they play this kind of like politics where they can kind of like make the government of India not do, you know, like not be very vocal about the Tibetan issues politically. So these are like the kind of example, you know, the kind of politics Chinese government plays currently.
In 2011, the Dalai Lama announced that he would be stepping down from his political role in Tibetan life, and there was a strong reaction from the Tibetan people across the spectrum. What was your reaction to that? How did you feel about that?
It was way back in 2011, right? So when His Holiness Dalai Lama completely devolved his political responsibilities to the elected leadership. So personally, I felt like as a Tibetan, I felt like because we never had a democratic system, like historically. And it was a difficult moment for the Tibetan people in India, and I'm sure in Tibet also, all over the world, including me. So where we imagine a government or the Tibetan government in exile without His Holiness Dalai Lama actively taking part in the process, because His Holiness is a huge international figure, and it really makes a lot of difference in our movement and in our struggle. But if we take a moment to think deeply about the decision, I feel like there's a very critical decision, there's a critical step that His Holiness Dalai Lama took, foreseeing the future of our struggle without His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So to keep our issues alive, movement alive in the future, I feel like there's a very, very critical and strategic decision that His Holiness Dalai Lama took. With democracy, we can keep our issues alive in the future. with the elected leadership taking the responsibilities. And on the other hand, Chinese government has always been claiming that issue of Tibet is not the issue of the Tibetan people. They have been claiming that issue of Tibet is just the position and power of the Dalai Lama. So His Holiness Dalai Lama devolving his responsibility to the elected leadership, and elected leadership with the support of the Tibetan masses taking the responsibility. So it shows, it sends a very clear message to the China and the international community that Tibetan issue is not mainly the issue of the power and the like the personal position of the His Holiness Dalai Lama. It is about the interests of the 6 million Tibetan people. It is about the aspiration of the Tibetan people. It is about the future of Tibetan people. Yeah.
Lobsang Sangye is the current prime minister.
He's a former Sikyong. Pemba Tsering is.
Okay, that's right, 10%. How did you feel about Lobsang Sangye's role? What did he accomplish? He didn't come from the monastic order as the previous prime minister. So, what did that signal to you?
I feel like with Dr. Lobsang Sangye reigning the power or becoming the Sikyong in 2011, I remember because I was in college that time, and I remember watching it live on YouTube, where like there was a function at the Tsuklakhang, that's the monastery of the His Holiness Dalai Lama, where His Holiness Dalai Lama was formally handing over the stamp and all those official seals, which was handed over to him by the Takta Rinpoche, who was the former, Sikyong, or who was a former political leader. I mean, not a political leader, who was a former regent, who took over the government of Tibet, administration of the Tibet when Tibet was an independent nation, when His Holiness Dalai Lama was a minor. So he handed over, Takta Rinpoche handed over all these official seals and stamp to His Holiness Dalai Lama when His Holiness Dalai Lama took over the power. So that particular function, when His Holiness Dalai Lama, handed over those official seals to the young Harvard graduate, that kind of like indicates and sends a clear message to the Chinese government that young Tibetan people are ready to take up the role and responsibility of the Tibetan struggle. And I felt really proud about that movement, and really felt very happy, and felt really encouraged and inspired by the whole event. So I mean, I feel like he did quite a good job.
This is a question that comes from a Western perspective. To the degree that Westerners know anything at all about Tibet, the first thing that comes to their mind are the monks and the nuns. Right. So, as a younger Tibetan, how do you view the influence of monks and nuns on Tibetan society in general? What role do they play in a young person's life like yourself, if any at all? Just sort of, talk about the Westerner's perception and whether that is accurate or inaccurate, helpful, not helpful. How do you feel about this perception?
Yeah, so I cannot blame the Westerners for thinking on those lines, because historically 10% of our population was mainly monk and nuns. So we Tibetan people are very spiritual. We're 99%, more than 99% of Tibetan people populations are Buddhist, and I can imagine, so yeah. With the influence of the monks and nuns, I would say, I cannot right now think of the kind of the direct, maybe the influence can be of preservation of the Buddha Dharma, even though I'm not putting the responsibility on the monks and nuns, for the preservation of the Buddha Dharma, but I would say that because they devote whole their life and whole their time and energy for the preservation and studying the Buddhist texts and Buddhist literature. So I feel like the influence would be of them doing that, and kind of like those work kind of like transcending into the lay people or ordinary or young generations, because I believe that Buddha Dharma and its texts is not just for it's not about just about like taking a round of the monastery and reading the prayers and doing all those ritual things. Is mainly about like studying the Buddhist texts and kind of like changing your inner world and all these things, right? So I mean, in that part, I feel like the monks and nuns may have a great role, you know, in kind of like helping the younger generation Tibetan people keep our Buddhist tradition alive. And in that way, I feel like it will also have an indirect impact in how we carry forward our movement, in terms of how we think, in terms of how we strategize, because Buddhism as a religion is very scientific religion, right? So I feel like with younger generation studying Buddhist texts and Buddhism, taking seriously, seriously studying Buddhism, it would really have a lot of like impact in how we kind of like view the world, how we view the politics, how we view the interdependent nature of our world, interdependent nature of the politics. So I feel like it would have indirect positive impact on these things. Yep.
Okay. Final question. What are your hopes for the future of Tibet?
Yeah, as I said before, I'm really hopeful about the future of Tibet. Hopeful, but at the same time, we cannot be complacent. We cannot be sitting idle, because what we do in the coming 20, 30 years, and what we do in the post-Dalai Lama era, that would really determine whether Tibetan issues would remain alive or not, and how we take part in the democratic process with ethics, with respect for the differences. So I mean, all of this together, I mean, really determines like where we would go forward in like 50, 60 years, apart from the other factors also. So yeah, as personally, I feel really hopeful, and His Holiness Dalai Lama have also been saying that change is bound to happen, and things would improve, and I really feel really hopeful deep inside my heart that one day, maybe not me, but my kids would see a free Tibet. Yeah.
One final question, a follow-up question.
Sure.
You used a phrase I have never heard a Tibetan use. You mentioned the post-Dalai Lama era.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think about that a lot?
Yeah, I do, honestly, I do think about that, and sometimes when I think about that, it really scares me, because His Holiness the Dalai Lama is the main factor behind the Tibetan issues being recognized at the international level, right, in the international community. And because of his stature, because of his influence, Tibetan people enjoys the support and the help from the other countries that we enjoy right now. So with His Holiness Dalai Lama, I mean post Dalai Lama era, and even right now, His Holiness has not been able to travel like internationally because of his age, like for the past like more than 6-7 years. And the people who know about Tibetan issues, and the lawmakers, senators, or politicians, they met His Holiness Dalai Lama like, I mean, a decade back, or like, and they're also aging, and with younger generation taking up responsibility, be it in the United States or be it in other countries. So sometimes like it really scares me thinking about the post Dalai Lama era. So, and that also makes me think that the younger generation of the Tibetan people have now a greater responsibility, than in the past in preserving our language, culture, tradition alive, and at the same time, lobbying or seeking the support and telling the world and creating awareness about what's happening in Tibet, and so that we get the support, the needed support and the help from the government around the world, because what's happening in Tibet right now, we cannot see that because of the censorship, right? So there's a greater responsibility on the younger generations.
Well, Thupten, thank you for your time. The text program appreciates your energy and your wisdom and your willingness to share your thoughts with us about this subject matter. I know that you have a graduation to go to since you're receiving your MBA from the Walton School, so we won't keep you any longer, but once again, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sidney, and thank you so much.